On January 29, 2025, Meta Platforms Incorporated finalized a $100 million settlement agreement with former President Donald Trump concerning the suspension of his social media accounts following the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack. This landmark settlement, reported by various media outlets including NPR and AP News, includes a direct payment of $25 million to Trump with an additional $22 million allocated for a nonprofit associated with Trump's future presidential library. The remaining funds are set aside for legal fees and compensation for other litigants involved in the case. Background of the settlement. The settlement stems from Trump's accusations of illegal, shameful censorship by social media platforms, particularly targeting Meta after his accounts were banned. Trump has consistently claimed that the actions taken by social media companies were politically motivated and an infringement on free speech. His legal strategy has focused on challenging the protections afforded to these platforms under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which generally protects them from liability for user-generated content unless they are found to be acting in bad faith. Implications for corporate relations. The settlement reflects a broader trend of Donald Trump re-engaging with major corporations after his presidency. Reports indicate that Meta's CEO Mark Zuckerberg made efforts to repair relations with Trump, including a dinner meeting in November 2024 where they discussed settling ongoing litigation. This meeting is seen as part of a strategic approach by Meta and other tech companies to align with Trump's administration as they anticipate his potential return to political office. Financial distribution and charitable contributions. The financial details of the settlement are particularly noteworthy. The allocation of $22 million for the future presidential library underscores the intertwining of Trump's personal, political, and financial interests. The agreement signifies not only a resolution to a legal dispute but also highlights how private donations can be leveraged for political and personal projects. This aspect has raised questions about the ethics of such financial distributions and their implications on political fundraising. Political and regulatory implications. The settlement carries significant political implications, particularly regarding social media regulation and the powers of private companies in moderating content. Trump and his supporters have long argued for changes to Section 230, suggesting that social media platforms should face more accountability for their content moderation practices. This settlement may serve as a catalyst for renewed discussions in Congress about the regulation of social media companies as both sides of the political spectrum grapple with issues of censorship and free speech. Comparisons in broader context. In the context of Trump's post-presidency legal battles, this settlement is not isolated. It follows a $15 million settlement with ABC News related to defamation claims, showcasing a pattern of Trump leveraging legal challenges against media outlets. His lawsuits against various media companies and platforms illustrate a strategic approach aimed at asserting his influence and addressing perceived injustices in media coverage. Summary of events leading to the settlement. The timeline leading up to the January 2025 settlement includes Trump's account suspension in January 2021, the subsequent legal actions taken against Meta, and the negotiations that culminated in this agreement. The backdrop of these events includes the contentious political climate following the Capitol riot and the ongoing debates about the role of social media in shaping public discourse. In conclusion, the $100 million settlement agreement between Trump and Meta not only resolves a significant legal dispute but also signals potential changes in the landscape of social media governance and regulation. As Trump continues to assert his political presence, this development may have lasting implications for how social media platforms navigate issues of content moderation and free speech. The intertwining of legal, financial, and political interests in this case reflects the complex dynamics of contemporary American politics and corporate governance. The settlement agreement between Donald Trump and Meta Platforms Incorporated reveals several counterintuitive aspects about the dynamics of social media regulation and the intersection of business and politics. 1. Censorship versus corporate power. At first glance, Trump's legal actions against Meta appear to be a fight against corporate censorship. However, the settlement reflects a complex relationship where Trump, a former president, is leveraging his influence to negotiate with a major corporation. This raises questions about the power dynamics between politicians and private companies. Instead of being a straightforward case of a powerful figure being censored, it shows a scenario where Trump is actively engaging with corporate power to seek financial and political advantage. This suggests a shift where the lines between public service and private interest blur, contradicting the common perception that politicians are solely at odds with big tech. 2. Financial gains from controversy. The settlement, which includes a significant financial component with funds earmarked for Trump's future presidential library, contradicts the notion that political figures suffer losses from legal battles. Instead, Trump seems to benefit financially from the controversy surrounding his social media bans. This outcome challenges the expectation that legal disputes will primarily harm a public figure's reputation or finances. Instead, it indicates a potential profit motive from leveraging such disputes. 3. Regulatory implications. Trump's continued litigation against social media companies suggests a broader strategy that could lead to regulatory changes counter to the prevailing notion that big tech companies are too powerful to be challenged. His narrative about censorship could resonate with a segment of the population that perceives social media companies as gatekeepers, potentially mobilizing public opinion to support legislative changes that limit these companies' powers. This dynamic contradicts the expectation that the tech industry is impervious to political pressure and could ultimately lead to a weakening of the protections afforded to these companies under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. 4. The role of charitable contributions. Designating funds for a nonprofit associated with Trump's presidential library introduces a counterintuitive element into the narrative of legal settlements, typically viewed as punitive or remedial. Such settlements can also be strategically crafted to enhance a political figure's legacy or influence through charitable endeavors. This suggests that legal and financial outcomes can be creatively aligned with personal branding and political aspirations, contradicting the expectation that legal battles are solely about retribution or compensation. 5. Perception of media companies. The legal actions against media outlets like ABC News also highlight a counterintuitive trend where Trump's litigation strategy results in significant payouts for his proposed charitable initiatives rather than merely being a means of seeking justice or rectification. This could alter the perception of how public figures engage with the media, transitioning from a narrative of victimhood to one where they actively reshape their narratives and financial landscapes through legal avenues. 6. Meta's strategic engagement. The willingness of Meta, particularly under CEO Mark Zuckerberg's leadership, to engage with Trump post-presidency signifies a shift in corporate strategies. Instead of maintaining a strict distance from controversial figures, large corporations may find it beneficial to cultivate relationships with them, especially in light of potential regulatory changes. This contradicts the expectation that corporate entities will consistently distance themselves from political controversies. Instead, it suggests a pragmatic approach to navigating complex political landscapes that could affect business operations. In conclusion, the $100 million settlement agreement between Trump and Meta encapsulates a multitude of counterintuitive dynamics regarding power, finance, and regulation in the context of social media and politics. This scenario invites a re-evaluation of how legal disputes are framed and the implications they hold for public figures, corporations, and the regulatory environment surrounding social media. The settlement agreement between Donald Trump and Meta Platforms Incorporated, while significant for its financial implications and the high-profile nature of the parties involved, contains several nuanced elements that are likely to be overlooked but carry substantial significance for the future of social media regulation and the broader political landscape. 1. Allocation of settlement funds. One of the most critical yet overlooked aspects of the settlement is the allocation of the $100 million. While many will focus on the $25 million payment to Trump, the fact that $22 million is earmarked for a non-profit associated with his future presidential library illustrates a blending of personal political and financial interests. This allocation signals a potential shift in how political figures leverage settlements, not just for personal gain but also to establish lasting institutions that can further their political narratives and legacies. This could set a precedent for future political figures or entities seeking similar settlements, potentially leading to a trend where personal legal victories are strategically tied to charitable or political foundations, thereby creating a new layer of influence in political fundraising and public relations. 2. Impact on social media regulation. The settlement reflects ongoing tensions around the powers of social media platforms in moderating content and the legal protections they enjoy under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Trump's allegations of illegal, shameful censorship highlight a critical discourse on the extent to which private corporations can control public discourse. As Trump continues to assert that social media has abused its power, this settlement may catalyze legislative efforts aimed at altering or repealing Section 230, which could have sweeping implications for all social media companies. The outcome of this legal battle and the public discourse it generates could lead to a re-evaluation of how social media platforms operate, potentially resulting in increased regulation or a shift in their content moderation policies. 3. Corporate relations and political reconciliation. Trump's post-presidential engagement with major corporations, particularly with Meta's CEO Mark Zuckerberg, is significant. The dinner meeting prior to the settlement underscores a potential thawing of relations between Trump and the tech industry, which had previously been characterized by mutual animosity. This reconciliation may indicate a broader strategy among corporations to align themselves with influential political figures, reflecting a trend where corporate interests increasingly intersect with political dynamics. The willingness of major tech companies to negotiate and settle with Trump may also indicate a shift in how they approach political controversies in the future, possibly avoiding protracted legal battles in favor of more conciliatory approaches. 4. Broader legal strategy. This settlement is part of a broader pattern of litigation that Trump has pursued since leaving office, which includes other high-profile legal actions against media outlets. Trump's legal strategy appears to be multifaceted, aiming not only at financial settlements but also at shaping public narratives around his presidency and ongoing political ambitions. The settlements and the discussions surrounding them could be used to bolster his claims of victimization by the media and tech industries, potentially galvanizing his base and influencing public opinion. This approach could serve as a model for other political figures facing criticism, encouraging them to pursue similar legal avenues as a means of fortifying their political positions. 5. Potential for future legal challenges. The settlement could embolden Trump and his allies to pursue similar legal challenges against other social media platforms and news organizations, further complicating the legal landscape for digital communication. This could lead to a series of lawsuits that challenge the legal frameworks governing social media, potentially resulting in significant changes to how these platforms operate. As Trump continues to position himself at the center of the social media discourse, his legal actions could pave the way for other politicians or public figures to follow suit, thereby intensifying the scrutiny and debate surrounding social media regulation. 6. Political capital and future campaigns. The financial outcome of the settlement has implications for Trump's political capital as he gears up for future campaigns. The funds allocated for his presidential library not only provide a financial boost but also serve to legitimize his political aspirations and solidify his legacy. The establishment of a library can act as a focal point for fundraising, community engagement, and narrative building, allowing Trump to maintain relevance in the political conversation. This strategic use of settlement funds could inspire similar actions by future political figures, altering the landscape of campaign financing and political legacy management. Conclusion. While the immediate financial implications of the Trump-Meta settlement are noteworthy, the underlying dynamics and potential repercussions are far more significant. The blending of personal and political interests in the allocation of funds, the implications for social media regulation, the evolving relationship between political figures and corporate entities, and the broader legal strategies at play all contribute to a complex narrative that extends beyond the settlement itself. As the political landscape continues to evolve, the ramifications of this agreement may influence not only Trump's future but also the operational frameworks of social media platforms and the nature of political engagement in the digital age. The significance of these overlooked elements lies in their potential to reshape the intersection of technology, media, and politics in profound ways. 1. Corporate relations and strategic engagement. The settlement signifies a potential shift in the relationship between Trump and major corporations like Meta. The proactive approach of Meta's CEO Mark Zuckerberg to engage with Trump post-presidency, including a dinner aimed at resolving ongoing litigation, underscores a broader trend of corporate leaders seeking to maintain favorable relations with influential political figures. This dynamic could reshape future interactions between tech companies and politicians, particularly concerning policy and regulation. 2. Financial implications and charitable contributions. The financial structure of the settlement is significant, with $22 million allocated for a nonprofit associated with Trump's presidential library. This allocation not only reflects Trump's continuing influence in political fundraising but also highlights the intertwining of personal, political, and charitable financial strategies. The implications here suggest a model where political figures leverage legal settlements for broader fundraising efforts, complicating the landscape of campaign financing and nonprofit operations. 3. Regulatory ramifications for social media. The settlement raises critical questions about the regulation of social media platforms regarding content moderation and censorship. Trump's allegations of illegal, shameful censorship direct attention to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which protects platforms from liability for user-generated content. Ongoing litigation and high-profile settlements may prompt legislative scrutiny and calls for reform, potentially altering the balance of power between users, platforms, and the government. 4. Legal trends and patterns in Trump's litigation strategy. Trump's recent legal activities, including multiple lawsuits against major media outlets and social media companies, illustrate a strategic pattern aimed at asserting his narrative and challenging perceived injustices. This broader legal strategy can influence public perception and media practices as it highlights the increasing intersection of politics and media law. The implications extend beyond Trump himself, potentially affecting how public figures engage with media and the legal frameworks governing such interactions. 1. The Microsoft antitrust case 1998-2001. In one of the most significant antitrust cases in history, the U.S. government filed a lawsuit against Microsoft Corporation alleging that it had engaged in monopolistic practices by bundling its Internet Explorer browser with its Windows operating system. The legal battle culminated in a settlement that imposed restrictions on Microsoft's business practices aiming to foster competition in the software market. This case highlighted the tensions between government regulation and corporate power, similar to the ongoing debates around social media regulation and the influence of major tech companies. 2. The Cuban Missile Crisis 1962. While not a direct legal case, the Cuban Missile Crisis provides a historical parallel in terms of the implications of political actions on international relations in media. The crisis arose when the U.S. discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba, leading to heightened tensions and a media frenzy. The government's handling of the situation alongside the media coverage showcased the power of information control and censorship, resonating with current discussions about social media platforms' role in moderating political content and the ramifications of such actions on public perception and governance. 3. The Pentagon Papers Case 1971. The release of the Pentagon Papers, a classified government report detailing the United States' political and military involvement in Vietnam, led to a landmark Supreme Court case, New York Times Company v. United States. The government sought to prevent the publication of the documents, citing national security concerns. Ultimately, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the press, emphasizing the importance of free speech and a free press. This case echoes the current debates surrounding the balance between social media regulation, censorship, and the preservation of free expression in the digital age. The recent $100 million settlement agreement between Donald Trump and Meta Platforms Incorporated marks a pivotal moment in the landscape of social media regulation and its intersection with political dynamics. As we look toward the future, several predictions can be made regarding the implications of this settlement and the broader trends in social media governance. 1. Increased scrutiny of social media policies. The settlement is likely to prompt increased scrutiny of social media platforms, particularly regarding their content moderation practices. As Trump has positioned himself as a critic of perceived censorship, we may see further calls for transparency in how platforms like Meta enforce their community standards. This could lead to more comprehensive regulations that require companies to disclose their moderation policies and the rationale behind account suspensions. 2. Legislative changes on Section 230. The ongoing debate surrounding Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is expected to intensify. Trump's legal actions highlight a growing frustration among certain political factions about the protections afforded to social media companies. As a result, we might witness legislative proposals aimed at reforming Section 230 to either increase accountability for content moderation decisions or limit the scope of immunity for platforms that engage in perceived biased censorship. 3. Rise of alternative platforms. In response to perceived censorship by major platforms, there may be a corresponding rise in alternative social media platforms that market themselves as free speech advocates. These platforms could attract users disillusioned with mainstream social media, leading to a fragmentation of online communities. This shift could challenge the dominance of established players like Meta and Twitter X and change the dynamics of online discourse. 4. Corporate strategy shifts. Meta's attempt to mend relations with Trump suggests that corporate strategies may shift in response to political pressures. More tech companies could seek to engage with political figures to navigate regulatory environments and mitigate the risk of litigation. This could foster a new era of corporate political partnerships, leading to potential conflicts of interest and ethical dilemmas regarding the influence of money in politics. 5. Legal precedents in media censorship cases. The settlement may set a legal precedent for other cases involving claims of censorship by social media companies. As Trump continues to challenge media narratives and platform policies, other public figures may follow suit, potentially leading to a wave of litigation that further tests the boundaries of free speech and corporate responsibility in the digital age. 6. Impact on future presidential campaigns. As Trump gears up for the 2024 presidential election, the implications of this settlement could extend to campaign strategies. His narrative of being a victim of censorship may resonate with a significant portion of the electorate, potentially galvanizing support. This could lead to a more aggressive stance from political campaigns regarding social media engagement, emphasizing the need for candidates to control their narratives on these platforms. 7. Public awareness and activism. Increased awareness surrounding social media regulation and censorship issues may lead to heightened public activism. Advocacy groups could push for more robust protections for free speech online while simultaneously calling for accountability from tech companies. This grassroots movement might influence future elections and policy decisions, as voters become more engaged with issues of digital rights and corporate influence. 8. Technological innovations for regulation compliance. In anticipation of potential regulatory changes, social media companies might invest in technological innovations to improve compliance with evolving standards. This could include enhanced algorithms for content moderation or tools that allow users to better understand why their content has been flagged or removed. Such advancements may aim to foster user trust and mitigate backlash against perceived censorship. 9. Global implications. The developments in the US regarding social media regulation could have global ramifications. Other countries grappling with similar issues of content moderation and free speech may look to the US for guidance, potentially leading to an international discourse on the role of social media platforms in democratic societies. 10. Long-term cultural shifts. Finally, the settlement may contribute to long-term cultural shifts regarding the relationship between politics and technology. As discussions about the role of social media in shaping public opinion continue, society may increasingly view these platforms as key players in political discourse. This perception could redefine the responsibilities of tech companies and the expectations of their users. In conclusion, the $100 million settlement between Trump and Meta serves as a microcosm of the broader challenges facing social media regulation today. As we move forward, the interplay between corporate interests, political narratives, and public sentiment will shape the future of digital communication and governance in profound ways. The evolving landscape will require vigilance from both lawmakers and citizens to ensure that the principles of free speech and accountability are upheld in an increasingly complex digital world.